Chapter 31. Crime Scene. It was getting past 6 o'clock, and Bob had not returned home for dinner. Bonnie was growing increasingly worried. She waited a while, then served dinner to her daughter, son-in-law, and their young children. Still, no sign of Bob. She tried his cell phone, but it wasn't turned on. A call was placed to the FBI to see if they knew where Hansen was. No, the word came back they had no information. Then the Trimbers left. Bonnie telephoned her mother in Chicago. "Pray for Bob," she said. "Something strange is going on. He hasn't come home." Bonnie feared there might have been a medical emergency or an accident. He might be lying in a hospital somewhere, unable to contact her. She was becoming frantic. It was well after dark now, and Bob had still not returned from the airport. Nor had he called. What was keeping him? Bonnie could stand it no longer. She got in her car and drove out to Dulles to look for him. The FBI followed her to the airport. In the parking lot, the G's approached Bonnie. They told her that her husband was unharmed, but agents would arrive in a moment to explain. The agents appeared and escorted Bonnie to a room inside the terminal. There she was told that her husband had been arrested. For espionage. She was destroyed. An FBI man said she was devastated. From the airport, the agents drove Bonnie, weeping and overcome, back to her house. They stayed with her as she made a series of telephone calls to family members to tell them what had happened. She called her mother again and told her the dreadful news. Bonnie's sister, Jean Beglis, and her husband George arrived from across the street to do what they could. Although the FBI agents were polite, they weren't about to leave. The house was a crime scene, and it would have to be thoroughly searched. The Bureau had obtained search warrants 2 days earlier. Special Agent Dave Lambert was already going through the house with Greg Hansen, the couple's 17-year-old son. Lambert asked where Hansen's guns were. Greg knew exactly where they were, leading the FBI man to the location of each firearm, in closets, under beds, seemingly all over the house. The only other Hansen child still living at home, Lisa, then 15, returned from a date with her boyfriend and stepped into the maelstrom. When told that her father had been arrested as a spy, she broke down sobbing. Jean Beglis cradled Lisa in her arms. The FBI agents alerted Bonnie that soon the house on Talisman Drive would become the center of a media frenzy, with yellow tape stretched across the lawn, television satellite trucks clogging the street, and reporters swarming the neighborhood. They offered to take her and the 2 children to a hotel to escape the chaos. She accepted and went upstairs to throw some clothes together. The agents escorted her and the children to the nearby Residence Inn at Tyson's Corner. At the house, and again in more detail at the hotel, Bonnie volunteered startling new information. Until then, the FBI's counterspies believed that Hansen had begun spying in October 1985. That was the date on the first letter from Hansen to the Soviets in the file that Mr. Pym had stolen from the KGB. For the first time, the FBI now learned from Bonnie that Hansen had in fact begun his espionage career in 1979, in New York. She related how she had surprised him in the basement of their home in Scarsdale writing a letter, which he had hastily tried to conceal. He admitted to her that he had received thousands of dollars from the Soviets, selling FBI secrets to them. He claimed he had been scamming the Russians, providing worthless information, which, as the FBI later found out, was a lie. She had insisted he see Father Bucciarelli, the Opus Dei priest, who at first advised Hansen to turn himself in, but then changed his mind and said he could instead contribute the money to a worthy church cause. Bonnie said that Hansen later contended he had given the money, $30,000, to Mother Teresa. It was only months later, after Hansen had pleaded guilty and was being debriefed, that the Bureau learned from him that in 1979, far from selling worthless information, he had betrayed to the GRU the identity of Top Hat, General Dmitry Fedorovich Polyakov, one of the most important U.S. agents inside the Soviet military. Top Hat was executed after he was also betrayed in 1985 by the CIA's Aldrich Ames. And it was only when Hansen was debriefed that the FBI also learned why the KGB's file from Mr. Pym contained no evidence of his earlier spying. The reason was that in 1979, Hansen had volunteered his information not to the KGB, but to the rival GRU, the Military Intelligence Service. At the Residence Inn, Bonnie continued to talk and respond to questions until almost dawn. The agents seemed satisfied with her answers. The FBI appeared persuaded that she had really believed her husband's promises that after his first venture in 1979 he would never spy again. She was clearly distraught and shocked by his arrest. Now it was early Monday, February 19th, and the public still knew nothing of the arrest of yet another supermole, this time not within the CIA, like Aldrich Ames, but inside the FBI itself. And to make matters even more humiliating, the spy was not only in the FBI, he was a counterintelligence agent in the National Security Division, the very part of the Bureau responsible for catching spies. The FBI braced for the storm that was sure to come. The FBI retrieved the package that Hansen had left under the footbridge in Foxstone Park moments before he was arrested. They substituted another, containing only blank paper. The agents kept the drop site in Foxstone Park under surveillance, hoping to catch an SVR officer in the act of retrieving the package that Hansen had left under the footbridge. Nabbing a Russian officer in the act would, if only a little, offset the bad news still to come about Hansen. But no Russian showed up Sunday night, or the next day. On Monday night, the FBI continued to keep the drop site under surveillance. Again, no one appeared. The FBI was not sure why the Russians had not cleared the drop. It may have been related to a mix-up at another drop site. For a week, FBI agents had been lying in the woods in the cold and the rain at the Long Branch Nature Center, 9 miles from Foxstone Park, watching the amphitheater that was Dead Drop Lewis, where the SVR had left $50,000 for Hansen. The FBI concluded that the money had been left at the Lewis drop site as a result of a breakdown in communication between the SVR and Hansen. Normally, Hansen and the Russians exchanged documents and money at the same drop site. Weather may have been partly to blame. When the Russians placed the $50,000 at Lewis, they put a piece of tape on a pole, Gallagher said. It rained. The tape shriveled up and fell off the pole. We found it about 2 feet away. 2 hours after Hansen's arrest, agents also picked up the money at the Nature Center. Hansen would not be needing it. Word of the sensational arrest could not be held indefinitely, and on Tuesday, February 20th, FBI Director Louis Freeh scheduled an afternoon press conference to announce the big news. He was too late. I had learned from a source the previous day of Hansen's capture and shared the dramatic intelligence that night with a good friend at NBC News. At 7 a.m. Tuesday, I appeared on NBC's Today Show as it broke the story of Robert Hansen's arrest.